Lauren Farina-Prieto. I am a psychotherapist, performance coach, and founder of Invited Psychotherapy and Coaching.
What inspired you to get into the mental health field?
I think I've always been fascinated by people's stories. I'm really interested in the human condition, in kind of what makes people tick. I also consider myself an extrovert, and so I really love connecting with people. And I kind of joke that I got into psychotherapy so that I could just spend my days talking to people and hearing their stories. And there's still some truth to that, you know. But I will say that as over the course of, gosh, the past couple of decades that I've been practicing, I've been particularly interested in this concept that the very things that we consider to be mental illness often are there to kind of try to help us, right? Sometimes our symptoms can be messengers like depression and anxiety. So that's what really drives my passion to this day.
Yeah, what is it like? People, are vulnerable or scared to go to the therapist. What is it like to, just be a support system for them?
I consider it a great privilege. I really think that the mind-body system is brilliant. I think it never makes a mistake. That again, it's always trying to help us, even if its well-intentioned, efforts and symptoms are coming at a great cost. And so I view my work as a celebration of that brilliance. So I again, I consider it sacred work. I consider it a great privilege. I understand the hesitation, the reluctance, and even sometimes the anxiety to really kind of dive in and turn towards those feelings and those symptoms, which we perhaps have spent our lives trying to numb or turn away from. So I appreciate that reluctance, but from where I'm sitting, it's like I said, a great privilege.
Yeah, how does it feel for you to be helping others?
I take a lot of pride in the work that I do, to be honest. And I know sometimes people have said to me, "Well, you're just sitting around and listening to people's stories day in and day out, and listening to people's problems." And I don't see it that way, right? I see it as taking my corner of the world and doing what I can to make it better, right? Because people's lives will be difficult, might be fraught with trauma, in pain, whether or not I'm participating in their support, right? So I really appreciate the opportunity to make that corner of the world a little bit better.
What are some of your methods?
So I like to take a more integrative and functional approach to mental health. So I use an approach that includes both top-down methods in which we kind of act on the mind to influence the body, right, the nervous system, etc. And I use what I call bottom-up methods in which we sort of act on the body. So for instance, with breath work or lifestyle changes to affect change in the mind. Um, so I can share some of those approaches from
Yeah.
through a top down lens. Some of I think probably the most important um, strategy that I could teach a client is values alignment, right? So studies have shown when we are living out of alignment with our values, meaning we're not spending our time and our energy on the things that matter most to us, our life doesn't reflect the things that are important to us. This stresses our mind and our body, our nervous system and our immune system in such a way that makes us more vulnerable to the development of physical and mental illness. And so, some of probably the first exercise that I do with most of my clients is a core values exercise in which I ask them to identify five or fewer values, core values, right, that sort of guide their decision making. And that list is intentionally limited, right? Five may sound like a lot. It's not, right? Once we kind of get into the weeds, because people have a hard time just, choosing between values like relationships and education and spirituality and health. But the list is intentionally limited so that we are really focusing on the values that matter most to the client. And then once we have those 5 or fewer values, I'll encourage my clients to assess whether the way that they spend their time and their energy is reflective of that list that they've created. And if not, then that's a big opportunity, right? If a client determines that their life isn't reflective of the things that matter most, then they can begin to brainstorm even small changes that they can make to better align their day-to-day lifestyle and their choices with the things that are most important to them.
For me, I live with bipolar disorder too, and I'm getting treatment and see therapists, psychiatrists, all for that. But I know I could do better in the physical health. So how important is it for to take care of both at the same time?
Michael, I'm so glad you asked because I think it is foundational. So, over the course of the past year and a half, I myself have really taken a deep dive into the very robust scientific research that supports the brain energy theory. I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Palmer's brain energy theory.
No, I haven't.
So Dr. Chris Palmer is a psychiatrist and a professor at Harvard University, and he's written a book entitled Brain Energy. And Dr. Palmer outlines the brain energy theory, which posits that metabolic dysfunction is at the root of all brain dysfunction. So whether it's mental illness or cognitive decline or even ADHD or autism spectrum disorders, Dr. Palmer says we really have to look at metabolic health. And what's also astounding is that the vast majority of Americans, 80 to 90%, it's estimated, have some sort of even subclinical metabolic dysfunction. Right. So even if we don't have a diagnosis of, say, type 2 diabetes, most of us are probably dealing with some subclinical metabolic dysfunction. And the reason that's important is that means that our cells can't synthesize enough energy to support optimal brain function, right? So if our brain isn't getting enough energy, then it can't function as it was designed. So to answer your question, I think physical health and mental health are one and the same. And I would even argue you can't really have optimal mental health without optimal physical health, and vice versa.
When you're working with people, have you seen their confidence level rise as they go through the process?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the, you asked what is it like for me? How does it feel to be a
Yeah.
therapist and to help people? I think that's one of the most fulfilling um, things to sort of witness and observe as a client gains confidence in what I call self-leadership. And the research of motivation is really interesting. So we know that the achievement of any goal, however small, boosts confidence, right? Because we begin to learn ourselves to be somebody who sets goals and achieves them, or makes commitments to ourselves and follows through on those commitments. And so even if it's a small goal like, okay, I'm going to get outside for a 5-minute walk every morning, right? If a client is able to achieve that goal or achieve perhaps loftier goals like landing a job that they really wanted or really nurturing a relationship that's important to them, their confidence grows in such a way that they feel more and more likely to take on bigger goals and achieve those too.
When I was doing my research, I saw that you do public speaking. What is it like to get all your thoughts and ideas out to more people?
Yeah, it's really exciting for me. I have to tell you, Michael, public speaking is probably my favorite part of my job. If you can't tell, I'm really passionate about kind of what I do and what I've learned. And certainly working on a micro level, one-on-one with clients is very fulfilling, and I enjoy that. But to be able to have an even greater impact with a larger audience feels like an extremely valuable use of my time, because I think there's so much misinformation and miseducation out there around mental health. So it's really it's a treat for me to get to share some of this information. And really, I see it as empowering others with information. I recognize that there's so much that each of us can do to facilitate our own healing. And so I love arming people with that knowledge.
What do you do to help your own mental health?
That's a great question. I take this stuff so seriously, right? I truly walk the walk, Michael, and I don't ask my clients to do anything that I am not willing to do, but B, more likely, probably are not already doing. So things that I do to support my mental health is I am ruthless about values alignment. So I really make sure that I make the time for the things that are most important to me. My family, my kids, right? Taking care of myself. So even though sometimes there's a little bit of drift and it can be tempting to kind of overload or oversaturate myself with clients and opportunities, I'm really ruthless about setting boundaries so that I can take care of the things that matter most to me. Beyond values alignment, I think really connecting with nature has been so therapeutic for me on both a mental, top down and bottom up level. So I go for daily walks. I live outside of Chicago, and it's been a brutally cold winter, and I'm still out there most days, getting a little bit of sunshine, even if it's a cloudy day, getting some movement in, and just having some peace and quiet too. Walks for me are kind of like a mindfulness practice. So I'm sure to prioritize those as part of my day and my schedule.
What are some of the things you've learned from your kids?
Oh my gosh, that's such an awesome question. Um, my kids have taught me so much. I often joke that, my kids were my first lesson in surrender. You know, having historically been kind of a type A perfectionistic person before having kids, my children have taught me the value of letting go, right? And embracing the fact that I can't control everything, and kind of being really present with them, because that's what kids require us as adults to be, right? Is present. And the other really important thing that I think I've learned along the way, both in my motherhood journey, but also working with my clients, I work with a lot of what I call high performing individuals. So they are those type A perfectionistic, people pleasing individuals. And what I've learned is that a big precipitant of anxiety and self-doubt and low self-esteem for many adults is that as children, they didn't get sort of unconditional positive regard, right? They didn't get to just rest in their parents' love and safety and affection, because oftentimes, and especially parents from previous generations, really express their love as conditional, right? Certainly all parents love their children. I would say most parents love their children unconditionally, but sometimes the way that we express it, right? Only when you do well on your report card, or only when you clean your room, or only when you make me proud, right? It sends a message to young kids that you're only valuable and you're only worthy when you're performing. Right. So I've been really careful. I'm not a perfect parent by any means, but I've been really careful to consistently conveyed to my kids that they are seen and heard and valued, irrespective of their performance. And that's been something that a lesson that I've been really grateful for as a mother and as a clinician.
And you talked earlier about being in the field for decades. Have you seen the stigma of just talking about mental health lessening a little bit?
Absolutely, I have. And I credit social media with a lot of that shift. Social media, I think there's duality in all things. So, we know we've seen the research that social media can have a negative effect on our mental health. But I think social media has also helped to normalize mental illness and the need for support services like psychotherapy and psychiatry, because I am of the opinion that everybody at some point in their lives could benefit from meeting with a counselor or a therapist, just like everybody at some point in their lives could benefit from meeting with a doctor, right? We all have a body, and the mind is part of that body, and we need to be, I think, really intentional about caring for it.
What would you say to anyone going through a tough time?
I would say that we all have problems sometimes, and that is part of the human condition. And sometimes those problems can overwhelm us. And in those instances, I view problems truly as invitations, right? And the name of my practice is Invited, right? Because I believe that with every problem or crisis comes an invitation or an opportunity to evolve personally or relationally or professionally. And the wise among us kind of turn towards that invitation and get curious about what it has to offer, right? I think we get into the most trouble when we seek to just avoid or numb out or distract from the pain that comes from those very normal problems that we can experience. So I encourage anybody who's going through a tough time to recognize that, number one, they're not alone, that this is just the human condition, right? And that, number two, they are presented with an opportunity. And it might be a big opportunity to really, again, grow or evolve or up level in some way. But knowing when to ask for help, I think, is a key, right? It's knowing when to ask for help and how to ask for help. That is the difference between unnecessarily prolonged suffering and an opportunity for healing.
Where do you want to see your mission, say, in the next 3 to 5 years?
I really think that our mission is to illuminate a path of healing, right? In a way that is maybe unconventional or disruptive, right? To sort of the mainstream medical model, right? I really think that each individual has the innate ability to heal under the right conditions. And it's that under the right conditions part that can be difficult to figure out. So our mission is to illuminate that path, to empower our clients, to harness the knowledge and the skills and the abilities to heal and to thrive, even if it means a slight departure from the mainstream way of treating mental illness.
So, how can people reach out and learn more?
Yeah, well, they're welcome to read more about us on our website at www.invitedoakpark.com. Or we've got an small Instagram following, but an Instagram following nonetheless at invited.llc. They can learn more about us there.